Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And yes, the cat has again managed to fuck up the camera. So welcome, everyone. And today we are doing our reading on race, which is why I'm no longer talking to white people about race, by Reni Eddo-Lodge. And we finished a chapter in the last session. We finished chapter 4. And now we get on to chapter 5. Oh, B. How is everybody doing today? Is everything all good? We are live on TikTok, on my backup, on TikTok, which is at Nikki Starfish, which is my usual name around the interwebs. Yeah, it's on the backup. And then we're also live on Twitch, YouTube, and in Discord. So yeah, if you are unable to remain in one of the places, you can always join on another. So, yeah. I hope everyone is doing okay. So, I was looking for an old character sheet and I found character sheets, well, makeshift ones, from my characters where we were playing Basic in Sweden. That was interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna probably write up these characters. I probably won't keep them as characters for Basic, but I need to switch off co-hosting. Because I keep on getting freaking invitations to co-host from people I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you want to battle and whatnot. Just the first time I say decline, you should listen. It's kind of weird being on the backup because, like, I haven't really worked on this algorithm yet. But yeah, I hope you are all okay and that your day is going well. We are going to get into it. Whenever we look at issues of the white supremacist delusion and capitalism, one of the topics that always falls behind is that of gender. And so I think it is mainly Black women writers who make a point of including topics of gender into discussions about the white supremacist delusion and capitalism. And so she goes into it here. The last chapter was talking about the fear of a black planet, or the great replacement theory, which is an absolute falsehood. And in these spaces online, we're constantly saying, listen to black women, listen to black women, listen to women of color in general. But do we actually understand what that means? Yee, thank you for the follow. Um, yeah, I still need to friend a whole lot of people on this account. It's basically I got restricted from going live for a week on TikTok because I was fundraising for Left Jess by doing my usual thing. And if you know what my usual thing is, if you know, you know. But yeah, um, I've been restricted from going live, so I am on my backup. Um, yeah, we often say listen to Black women. We say listen to women of color. We say listen to the experiences of the most marginalized. And statistically, the most targeted demographic in the world, Black trans women. But so often in these spaces, people don't know what that truly means. People don't know what it is like to actually listen to people and listen with an open heart, open ears, and an open mind, and listening with total empathy. That also means we can do two things at the same time. Or, as a friend always says, a thing can be more than one thing. We are fighting a battle on more than three fronts here, but we are ultimately fighting the trifecta of oppression. We are fighting capitalism. We are fighting this white supremacist delusion. Or as a creator, Ashley, on TikTok said last week, put it very perfectly, very succinctly, by saying, it's not white supremacy. The supremacy is the delusion. It is white narcissism. And she's absolutely correct. So we are fighting that. And we are also fighting patriarchy. Patriarchy, which exists in so many forms, not just domination by men, but specifically white male domination, intersectional domination from men of color, domination in the patriarchal sense that is defended by white women in their defense of white narcissism. And it all stems from the colonial conquest of resources, land, and domination. And please excuse the cat butt. He is a strange one. Sorry, I need to check if he disturbed the camera. He did not. Oh, he did slightly. I don't know. This cat just has no respect for space, for personal space. But I think that is the definition of cat, just irreverence for personal space. But patriarchy comes in many forms. It comes in the form of utilizing minority groups to justify certain gender ideologies. I wore a t-shirt to gym today that said the gay agenda and a person pushing against the lettering. So essentially pushing the gay agenda. South Africa was the second country in the world to legalize gay marriage. And we still don't have complete marriage equality. in South Africa. It's still under civil union. It will never be seen as marriage because of the South African Council of Churches and the traditional leaders. But people sometimes, in defense of patriarchy, use women's struggles, such as the bathroom debate, if you can call it that. They sometimes use the whole protection of women's sports when they don't even watch women's sports. But it is all in defense of patriarchy. It's in defense of heteronormativity, of cis heteronormativity. And that is in defense of patriarchy. And it's all a ruse to keep patriarchy safe. And who suffers the most? Who has been kicked out of women's bathrooms the most? It's cis black women. Because throughout history, black women have been masculinized because of racism. And so we can never single out just one of these things. Hi, Taro. We can never single out capitalism, patriarchy, and the white supremacist delusion from each other. Like, we can never say that one fight is more important than the other. Because it's 2222, make a wish. They are also intrinsically intertwined. So we get to chapter 5, the feminism question. And please do forgive the shakiness if my leg is shaky. I had a really good but tough workout today, and my muscles feel a little bit wobbly. So we are on page 143, chapter 5, if you want to read along. Back in October 2012, I sat in a cold university library, furiously typing out a blog post on race and feminism. I was supposed to be revising, but was so irritated I could barely sit still. Lena Dunham's television program Girls had premiered that year to critical acclaim. It was widely regarded as an accurate reflection of young women's lives. The characters were all working low-paid jobs and waiting for their lives to begin. They bickered among themselves and wrestled with jealousy, pettiness, and body image troubles. These were all characteristics I recognized among my peers. And myself. Most of us were just drudging ahead, balancing unpaid internships alongside bar retail jobs, in the hope that we would reap the same rewards for hard work as the generation before us did, or say they did. All right, Taro. I have tea. Thank you, my lovey. Good night. I love you.
Love you.
You're handsome. WT. And, I have the plushie named Barack Obama, the llama plushie. This is Michelle Obama. We had been hoping for a 9-to-5 job and secure housing. We thought that if we worked hard enough, we would rid ourselves of that panicky feeling that sets in when you don't quite know where next month's rent is coming from. Oh, my sweet summer child. The scenarios in Girls was hugely familiar, but the program set in New York City was starkly white. Because of this, it was hard to take commentators seriously when they insisted that it was one of the most feminist television shows in decades. James, that's when I realized, oh yeah, you're actually American. As a result of the show, one of the most prominent debates in recent years about feminism's race problem began to brew. And of course, it didn't start here, but this is where it really started on places like, I don't even know if it was Tumblr or which social media it was, but the the discussions began on social media. Coffee and pizza sounds good. But it was the first time that this kind of discourse had been undertaken by people who were not just commentators, not theoretical critics and uh, and journalists. The conversations were no longer just happening at dinner tables, in coffee shops, in university spaces. It was happening with people who don't have access to those spaces, who are not journalists, not social critics or commentators, and not academics. This was the first time I saw this discourse happening in real time among the proletariat. And it was vibrant discussion, but it also got incredibly ugly very quickly. Some asserted that it would be nothing but tokenistic for Dunham to write black characters into her TV show just for the sake of it. Others said that it was absurd to set a television show with an all-white cast in one of the most racially diverse cities in America. It's the same criticism we had about Friends. What do you mean, how so? To which comment? Oh, and also, while you guys are snowed in and freezing your asses off in the great white north, and in America's world, the great ice north, it is 28 degrees clitoris here. So, how these discussions turned ugly? Because they lacked intersectionality, a lot of them. So, white woman defending the show, defending Lena Dunham, defending how the show spoke to people and represented people. They did not understand what it, because they're so entrenched in their whiteness. It got ugly because they refuse to understand that they have always seen themselves represented on screen. And the assumption that any black or brown character in the show would be tokenistic is absurd. Because that's a fucking reality. Black and brown people exist. Like, just because a white person is telling the story, they can't have people of other races? What? And it was the people who were defending the show who made those discussions ugly. Because they were defending whiteness. They weren't defending artistic integrity. Hello, comrade. It's good to see you. To me, it was obvious It wasn't really about a TV program, although the program was symptomatic of a widespread problem. Finishing up the blog post, I wrote, when feminists can see the problem with all male panels but can't see the problem with all white television programs, it's worth questioning who are they really fighting for. Ultimately, these are white feminists and they're fighting for themselves. Ugh. Moss, did you see what I put in the server earlier? Someone in a comment section. Oh, let me find it. Yeah, someone in the comment section of a live said, "Can't we just go back to normal police brutality, please?" And I'm just like, what? What? On reflection, that representation and inclusion of black faces wasn't actually what I was passionate about. This wasn't about being seen or being included. I was accustomed to not seeing positive reflections of black people in popular culture. An all-white television program was nothing new. What I was really upset about was the ease with which white people defended their all-white spaces and spheres. Theirs was an impenetrable bubble, and their feminism sat neatly within it. That's exactly what I've been saying against white feminism for years. Like, are you being for real? Like, are you serious? You think this is okay? You've always thought it was okay. Yeah. Normal police brutality, right? Not only this, but the feminists who insisted they were agitating for a better world for all women didn't actually give a shit about black people, and by extension, they didn't give a shit about women of color. Gender equality must be addressed, but race could languish in the corner, and that has always been the case. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a tidbit from the book that I've been writing for the past 2 years. Yay! On white women and weaponizing oppression. White women's tears mean nothing to me. Until white women begin to see patriarchy as the common enemy and not brownness, we will never be on the same page. White women need to meet us where we are, beyond objectification, fetishization, and white guilt, so that we can face the issues that oppress us all together. This is not a call for guilt and self-flagellation. That just detracts from the point and continues to center their fragility. It's a demand for reckoning, and reckoning, or becoming, cannot be performative. My mother knew this long before I had language for it. Her hands knew it in the way they stayed busy, never still, never reaching outward for protection that would not come. Rough palms, split cuticles, nails worn thin by work that was never named as work. Those hands learned early that white women's tears were not harmless, that they carried consequence, that they summoned authority like a bell rung in a room where brown women were never meant to speak, and they reached out to all the women of color around her. My mother learned through kitchens and offices, the classroom she taught in, and organizing rooms and quiet humiliations, that whiteness could cry and be comforted while brown women were expected to absorb the fallout with grace. She learned restraint, not because she was passive, but because she understood the cost of refusal. She knew that to upset a white woman, especially under apartheid, was to invite surveillance, suspicion, and punishment. She knew that solidarity was conditional, offered so long as we were agreeable, quiet, useful, and grateful. When white women demand that we soften our anger, dilute our truth, or wait our turn for justice in exchange for their support, her hands tightened, not in submission, but in calculation. She had seen what happens when brown women do not comply. She had seen jobs being lost, reputations destroyed, doors quietly closed. She saw how white women's distress could be transformed into institutional action, while our distress was pathologized, dismissed, or even criminalized. This is the knowledge I inherited before feminism ever named itself to me. It lived in the way my mother taught me to be careful without ever calling it fear, to be precise without calling it strategy, to survive systems that pretended to offer protection while sharpening their knives behind polite smiles. My feminism did not begin in theory. It began with my mother, who understood that white women's tears are not just an emotional expression, but instruments of power, capable of undoing lives, movements, and truths, all while insisting on its innocence. Also, hi Blair. White feminism is how we got gay men kicked out of. Oh, yeah. And there's a white woman whom I actually need to have a chat with, who shut down conversation with a trans man about abortion. Because she said, "You're still a man. Trans women are always, well, we try to include trans women in spaces talking about things like prostate cancer. Why can we not include trans men in talking about pregnancy related issues and reproductive health care?" Because white feminism is exclusionary by nature, by definition. It's exclusionary. Yes, but not everybody has access to. There's still men. But my point is, white feminism is exclusionary because it was built to protect whiteness. The same sort of scenario happened repeatedly over the next couple of years. Just 1 year later, pop star Lily Allen released her first music video, Hard Out Here, after a long hiatus from the music industry. The formula of the resulting race row was similar to the furor around girls. A young and successful white woman had revealed public work that was immediately lauded as raw, relatable, and utterly thoroughly feminist, the definitive anthem for young women everywhere. In this instance, though, it wasn't a lack of black people that sparked the upset. The black bodies were present, but Lily Allen's black backup dancers were scantily clad, dancing in a parody of misogynistic hip-hop videos as she sang about glass ceilings, objectification, and strongly implied that smart girls didn't need to strip to be successful. I hated it. After a while, it became wise to stop paying attention to anything tagged vaguely feminist in popular media, as it would only end up being disappointing. What I carried on doing was writing. Sounds familiar. And I find a lot of the black and brown people I relate to in terms of understanding popular culture are writers. But also what they did to distance themselves from the pain of the everyday was to escape into writing. Engage with the thought, but instead of having the conversation with the people who did harm, is to retreat into pen and paper. And I find myself doing that more and more these days. On New Year's Eve of 2013, I was invited by a BBC producer to appear on Radio 4's Women's Hour. It was a fairly innocent request to discuss the year in feminism alongside Laura Bates of the Everyday Sexism Project and Caroline Criado Perez, who that year had campaigned to have historical woman figures featured on British banknotes. When I took my seat in the studio, I realized I was the only black face in the room. That was the first red flag. I was joined by Laura and the radio presenter. Caroline was phoning in. The segment began. I was nervous. I explained that I didn't really consider myself a campaigner, but that during the year I'd been writing about racism in the feminist movement, my frustrations with doggedly white-centric perspectives from the movement's so-called leaders, and found that lots of women who were not white were feeling exactly the same way. A tide has turned in terms of these issues on feminism, I said. They cannot be ignored anymore. And she's right. I love your face too. Thank you for being here. The burden then fell on me to explain why feminism was divided and why feminism needed a race analysis in the first place. I was asked, what lies at the bottom of the division, and why has the phrase check your privilege become so popular? That was the second red flag. This framing suggested that racism wasn't a concern for my white peers. Having worked with Laura Bates in the past, I knew that this wasn't the case. Despite my discomfort, I put forward my case for the need for race analysis in feminism. But my point was quickly picked up by Caroline Criado Perez, who said that people had used the anti-racist perspective as a reason to harass and bully her online. Oh, boo fucking who? The context of her comment was disturbing. Earlier in that year, Caroline's Women on Banknotes campaign had drawn national headlines. The press coverage attached a misogynist sentiment, and what started out as a win quickly descended into one of the most high-profile British cases of online harassment. When the Bank of England announced plans to put an image of author Jane Austen on the £10 note, the Women on Banknotes campaign claimed this as a success. But because of the harassment that followed as a result of the campaign's work, Caroline had been sent death threats, receiving messages that told her that bombs had been installed outside her home. She was repeatedly messaged by anonymous ill-wishers who were encouraging her to commit suicide. Eventually, 2 people pled guilty to sending some of the more vicious tweets. They were sentenced to 12 and 8 weeks in prison respectively under the Malicious Communications Act. On that New Year's Eve, Women's Hour, Caroline's comment, aimed at discrediting her online abusers, came across as equating my work in politics with these vicious and abusive messages. Yep. The UK needs feminism. Like actual feminism. It's never had it. I felt implicated in the harassment against her. In the studio, it fell to me to account for Caroline's horrific experiences, putting me in the position of defending the arguments that I didn't share, of people I didn't even know. I was completely lost for words. It was the cost of representation, the overwhelming whiteness of feminism, on a radio show segment that would have been all white if it wasn't for my presence, was not considered a problem. Of course, it's the BBC. They represent the crown. And what did they do to the last person of color at Buckingham Palace? Bullied her out of it. I had wanted to discuss how feminism wasn't exempt from white privilege, but instead found myself on the receiving end of it. There was a storm about the interview immediately after we came off air. Some people were as shocked at this assertion as I was. Others were convinced that I was a liar and bully who had been waging war against Caroline. Not true, and that by balking at her intervention I was playing the victim. I hadn't wanted to at first, but after some encouragement, a few hours later I wrote a short post clarifying what went on. Think about the last time you heard a comprehensive description of the nature of structural racism in mainstream media, I wrote. These issues just don't get the kind of airtime that feminism does in the UK press. Think hard about the last time that you heard a person of colour challenge the virulently racist rhetoric around immigration, or just state the plain fact that structural racism prevails because white people are treated more favourably in society. I was afforded the opportunity to do this live on national radio. I didn't take it lightly. After a concerted effort from many a white woman to portray black feminist thought as destructive and divisive, I am aware that accepting these media requests is a double-edged sword. It was Audre Lorde who said, "If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive." Though it sometimes feels like I'm entering into a trap, it's a trap. I'm hyper aware that if I don't accept these opportunities, black feminism will be mischaracterized and misrepresented by the priorities of the white feminists taking part in the conversation. I am tired of this tribal deadlock. I meant what I said on the program. The only way to foster any shared solidarity is to learn from each other's struggles and recognize the various privileges and disadvantages that we all enter the movement with. Caroline apologized in the early evening, writing on Twitter, "I just wanted to apologize if this AM it came across like I was suggesting the abuse is something you have been party to." If. That's not an apology. I didn't mean to imply it at all, but I can see that given I responded to your comment, it might have seemed like that. I didn't want to suggest I ever felt abused by you. I haven't. Because, of course, you haven't abused me. I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about abuse I've experienced. Why did she do it in... And how damaging I think it is, because it needs to stop, but perhaps could have picked a better moment or way of saying it. So I am sorry for that. That's not an apology. That's putting the flimsiest tape over a broken window. It's... yeah, that's just not an apology. The fact that she chose talking about race as an opportunity to talk about abuse shows her positionality when it comes to talking about race and her position on talking about race in feminism. Despite her apology, the day got worse. The former Conservative MP and self-fashioned right-wing feminist Louise Mensch saw fit to swoop in and support Caroline, beginning to tweet at me, "Remy was wrong and Caroline was wrong to give in to her bullying, and I shouldn't have." I told her she was stirring. She responded, "I would hope that I'm stirring against your frankly disgraceful attitude, and I'm not lying. You are bullying, trying to silence." How? For the crime of daring to suggest that racism is still a problem in Britain, I had been smeared by a former member of parliament. By simply using my voice as was tantamount to being a bullying disgrace. Old racist stereotypes were being resurrected, and I found myself on the receiving end of all of them. I was a social problem, disruptive force, and a tragic example of a problem community. Years later, while writing this book, I contacted Caroline in the hope of getting her perspective on the Women's Hour debacle. She didn't want to speak about it. I wonder why. Maybe because her apology was fucking fake. Even though I write about my experiences with so much contempt, feminism was always my first love. It was what gave me a framework to begin understanding my world. My feminist thinking gave rise to my anti-racist thinking, serving as a tool that helps me forge a sense of self-worth. Finding it, age 19, was perfect timing, equipping me with the skills to navigate adulthood, stand up for myself, and work out my own values. I found feminism a few years before the Twitter and Tumblr generation really took off. It happened in a rather old-fashioned way, as an English literature student. I had been assigned a stack of books to read for a module on critical theory, which led me to Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. As unlikely a situation as it was, the book spoke to me. and I found myself furiously agreeing with the long-dead French existentialist. When she wrote, "To be feminine is to show oneself as weak, futile, passive, and docile. Any self-assertion will take away from femininity and seductiveness." It sounded like she was describing my entire existence. I couldn't find any people in my immediate vicinity who agreed, though. Criticizing misogyny in Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew in a university seminar drew disapproval from my peers, with the majority of my female classmates concluding that that's just how it was at the time. Oh, but was it 12th Night? Same guy. Same guy wrote both of those. Just by the way. And Taming of the Shrew is far more loved than 12th Night. I wonder why. So I sought out feminism elsewhere, spending my student loan money on traveling to feminist conferences and events happening around the country. Y'all in the global north are so fucking lucky. Like, all of the conferences? Like, no, I don't get to attend those. If I'm lucky, they'll be streamed online. During those years, I met tons of inspiring and passionate women, some who are still my good friends today. Being at feminist events was a relief, being in a space where people just got it. The shared anger, frustration, the burning will to do something, anything, to change the messed up world we live in. This passion took me to tiny, drafty church halls in little villages in the northwest of England, huddled in circles surrounded by women my mum's age, and on trains to London to huge gatherings packed to the brim with hundreds of women, young and old, some new to the movement and some who'd been engaged in activism longer than I'd been alive. But something wasn't quite right. Feminism was helping me to become a more critical, confident woman, and in turn helping me to come to terms with my blackness, a part of myself that I'd always known was shrouded in stigma. I'd grown up with white friends who assured me that they didn't see me as black. Wow. And that I wasn't like the other black people. Up until then, I'd understood myself as someone who was pretty for a black girl, as someone who spoke well for where she came from. I couldn't quite understand why these distinctions were made, but I had a feeling it was to do with class, education, and latent racism. The feminist circles I'd thrown myself into were almost all white. The whiteness wasn't a problem if you didn't talk about race, and if you did, it would reveal itself as an exclusionary force. And this is the conversation that we'd been having for the past few months. I know we should really be moving past it, but I'm going to talk about the way in which we will explain what happened with Nemo in the future. I have watched what happens when a white woman is scorned and chooses violence disguised as vulnerability. In this case, a white woman, let's call her Pamela, accused a brown femme, who uses they them pronouns, of sexual assault after the brown femme, let's call her Luna, ended the relationship. What follows was not a pursuit of justice, but a smear campaign. An online rampage ensued, aimed not only at Luna, but at anyone who dared to support them, question the narrative, or ask for nuance. The accusation alone was enough. No investigation was required. No space for complexity was allowed. Luna was immediately ostracized, isolated, and psychologically battered to the point that their mental health collapsed. Losing their job not because of any finding of harm, but because of the weight of the accusation and public vilification made survival impossible. The violence did not stop there. Someone who rallied behind Pamela's tears doxed me at my place of work for speaking in defense of due process and care. I was fired from a freelance contract, quietly and without recourse. Collateral damage in the wake of white women's tears. This is the reach of white womanhood when it's mobilized as moral authority. How power moves when whiteness and femininity combine. There were no consequences for Pamela, who made the accusation and orchestrated the harassment. There never are. Instead, brown women and femmes paid the price with their livelihoods, safety, mental health, and standing in a community. This is not an aberration, but a pattern. White women are believed not because women are believed, but because whiteness is believed. Their pain is treated as inherently truthful, their fear as inherently justified, their tears as inherently urgent. And when those tears fall, institutions respond swiftly, violently, and without hesitation, even if it means destroying the lives of brown and black people in the process. This is not solidarity gone wrong. This is white supremacy functioning exactly as it was designed to do. We are called exclusionary whenever we say a fin, a misshapen fin, like a tiny fin. That's also, I'm not going to say it. That's mean. A lot of white women in feminist spaces couldn't understand why women of color needed or wanted a different place to meet. So they would always find ways of subtly undermining the self-determination of those who chose to organize separately. At one gathering, there were paper sign-up sheets for every breakout session designed to keep tabs on the numbers of people attending each one. On the sheet for black feminists, someone had taken the time to vandalize it with ignorance, simply writing, "Why?" At another event, a friend held a breakout session called The Color of Beauty, with a big stack of fashion and beauty magazines piled in front of her. A pretty simple premise aimed at deconstructing Eurocentric beauty standards. It was primary school level, really. What are similarities and differences in these pictures? As others in my group pointed the model's slimness, I, the only black person in the group, said they're all white, and they've all got long hair, and added a white woman eagerly. Laboriously, I explained, yes, but you can grow out your short hair if you want to. I can't change the color of my skin to fit this beauty standard. She didn't understand. On and on it went like this, tiptoeing around whiteness in feminist spaces. And that's exactly what we do. We tiptoe. We tiptoe until we cannot stand on our toes anymore. Until it becomes painful. This wasn't a place to be discussing racism, they insisted. There are other places you can go to for that. But that wasn't a choice I could make. My blackness was as much part of me as my womanhood, and I could not separate the two. In my activist days, I joined a small group named Black Feminists, so I could speak my truth in a collective full of like-minded women without fear of social punishment. A space solely for women of color. We met once a month to vent and support each other. It was a space I desperately needed. Meeting with black feminists every month was not unlike the old-school feminist activist method of consciousness raising. The first used by New York radical women in the mid-1960s, who in turn took the tactic from America's civil rights movement. Of course. Everything was stolen from black and brown people. We would talk about whatever was happening in our lives. We began to learn from each other. I began to realize that other women were experiencing the same thing. Together we asked why. We took what we thought were isolated incidents and linked them to broader contexts of race and gender. I met my friend, writer, teacher, Lola She's friends with Lola Okolosi. I'm not sure if those first meetings people were saying this is structural racism, she said when we met to reflect on the purpose of the group. I think that out of meeting every month and all of the things we did in between, analysis started coming, and we were quick to start using the term. I remember people describing what it was, and everybody else in the room saying, yes, that's happened to me. Isn't it infuriating? People were coming at it from lots of different levels. Academic, some hadn't read any key feminist texts, and people's knowledge was varied. But we were all kind of describing the same hurts and frustrations, the same anger-inducing moments. That, to me, was powerful. It wasn't seen as moaning. It wasn't seen as reading too deep into things. It was like, yeah, we get it. We discussed why it was so important for us to meet without feminists who are white. That gaze does so much to silence you, she said. I think that's my question of the day. To all the people of color, whatever gender. Have you noticed, and if you have, how have you started to behave differently once a white person enters the room? That gaze does so much to silence you. Whew. Even if you're confident and vocal, there's still a holding back you have to do, because as a normal human being, you really don't like confrontation. And there's an element of just speaking the truth of what it means to be a black woman in the UK that would be ridiculous as a white person not to read that as implicating you. Because they're so tied to their whiteness. Their whiteness comes first. Not femininity, not womanhood. Never gender identity. Always race. Their whiteness comes first. I just assume they're around all the time, so I'm code switching often. Yep. It just occurred to me. It's not just that they're so intrinsically tied to whiteness that they cannot see themselves outside of it. It's that when we speak about whiteness, we are talking about the systems. But when they speak about blackness and brownness, they're talking about people. I think I'm going to stop there for today, because that thought has given me a lot more to think about than I actually wanted to today. I'm going to hang out in the server if you want to join me. You can chill here, darling. I'm going to be in there in a minute. So I'm going to hop off Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, eat something, drink water, take your meds. And remember that you deserve kindness, so say something kind about yourself. Remind yourself why you're still here. I know that things are hard right now, and I want to, before ending, it's not enough to say solidarity to the people in the US right now. It's not enough. Because we really need to do something. Not that the US has ever helped any of us in the global south when we've needed it, but that's beside the point. It's people in the US that need our help. It's not the US. So please, if you can, join one of your community groups that protects people, essentially. Yeah, it's what we can do. I know Brennan Lee Mulligan had a fundraising live on Instagram in the wee hours of one morning, and there's links in his bio. So if you don't know who Brennan Lee Mulligan is, I don't know if we can be friends. But just be kind to one another. And if you are a white person in the US and you are standing up for people of color, for immigrants in your area, let me remind you that once you quote unquote switch allegiance, your whiteness does not protect you. So be careful. Document everything. Encourage every single person you know on your street, if ICE is in your area, as soon as they get out of those vehicles, everybody on the street starts recording from different angles. And protect your fellow human beings. Protect each other with everything you've got. There's a lot of fuck shit going on in the world right now. The genocide is still happening in Gaza. It hasn't stopped. The only thing that has been honored in that so-called agreement that Trump and his cronies drew up is that all of the Israeli hostages were returned. That is the only agreement that has been met. Israel has not honored a single thing because honor is not in Israel's vocabulary. Fuck Israel. And it's no surprise that ICE and the US police were trained by the Israeli occupational forces. So yes, be kind. And if being kind looks like punching an ICE officer in the face, I'm not going to say don't do it. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. And we will continue with chapter 5 next week, Tuesday, but I will be back tomorrow, still on my backup on TikTok because I am banned until the 30th. But yes, I will be on Discord in a couple of minutes. Bye.